weed. Today we're covering weed. We get lots of emails and messages asking, is Horcott a weedy lake? The answer to that question is yes. Horcott is a gravel pit and is shaped like an egg box, which gives plenty of places for silt to hold up. This in turn is a great anchoring point and growth point for weed. The big question we get asked is, what are we going to do about the weed? The answer is nothing. The weed is a natural larder and great cover for the carp all year round. Myself and Tim are going to give you some handy tips and tricks in order to combat the weed.
So, like Ash has previously mentioned, fishing into the weed for a lot of people can feel quite intimidating. And because of this, people do tend to avoid it. But in doing that, I do feel that people are missing out on some great opportunities to fish for our beloved quarry in an area that they do feel most safe. So what I'm going to do now is talk you through exactly how I go about finding these features amongst the weed. Feel that down. Straight away I can feel resistance on the tip there, which tells me that's thick weed. So that's just not the one. We'll reel that back in and we'll go slightly right and see how that feels. Feeling that down. And again, quite a bit of resistance there. So again, that's telling me that it's quite thick weed there. Now it's worth mentioning, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at the far bank to look for markers. So I've got a viewing point and I know where I'm casting when I do actually find a spot. So what I'm going to do this time is come slightly left. That's nice and clear, that's coming back brilliantly. No resistance whatsoever. What it wasn't, I wasn't really happy with how the lead fell down though. Even though there was no resistance, I didn't get a proper thud on the lead. I'm going to come slightly left again. Feel it down. Oof. I felt the lead hit the deck then. Tells me that's a really firm spot, and as I'm pulling back there's no resistance and it's tapping on the rod tip. That tells me that's a nice little gravel patch. We'll go slightly left again and just see how big that spot is. Let's get rid of this weed off the line. Slightly left from that first spot I've just found. Feel it down. Oof. Again, tap, tap, tap. That tells me that that spot at the moment is good enough for 2 rods, but we'll go slightly left again to see if it's any bigger. Feel it down. Another donk. Pulling it back, quite a bit of resistance there though. So yeah, it's not really room enough for 3 rods, but definitely 2. Now as I'm standing in my swim, looking at that far bank, I'm looking for cutouts in the trees or anything else that you can use. It could be a mast or a telegraph pole. I know that when I clip up at that distance and use the trees on the far bank, I'm going to be fishing the same spot every time. So what we're going to do now is get some food out, clip everything up at that range, and we're fishing.
Okay Boxy, that's feature finding covered. So how would you present a lead and a rig inside that sort of situation?
90% of the time, Ash, I will favour the helicopter setup. It's all about presentation, and that's even more important when you're fishing in weed. Once you cast into your chosen spot with an helicopter setup, the lead will obviously plummet in first. And because I've got a pop-up presentation on here, that gets pushed up to the bead, which you can set at a desired level. That will then lower itself down nice and easy on top of any low-lying weed or debris.
Okay, so you're basically fishing across the top of the weed?
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to be fishing any, that will literally lie on top of it.
Okay, so would you spot across that sort of situation?
Yeah, 100%,
yeah?
Definitely.
So creating a spot in amongst the weed with your pop-up set on top of it?
Yeah, because essentially that's just a single loop bait, so I want to put some food over the top as well.
Okay, right then. So the way the wind is today, I mean, you can get variations in the wind. It can go north, south, east, west, move all over the place. With the weed in here growing the way it does, it moves canopies. So you could be fishing a small spot. If the wind was to change and pick up and move the weed over it, and you needed to get a bait back on your spot, how would you do that?
In that situation, you've got to use a solid bag, really. But again, it's all down to presentation, and if there's too much weed on the spot, that will plummet in, hit the deck, eventually dissolve and explode, leaving yourself with a nice parcel of food with a rig in the middle.
And giving you the presentation sat on the bottom?
Yeah, presentation is really important.
Would you spot over that?
No. Generally, if you're in a situation where you've got to be using PVA bags, the weed's too thick.
Okay.
So if you're trying to spot over the top, none of it's hitting the floor anyway.
Just essentially sitting up on the top as bird food?
Yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely.
So we've gone through what I would use. How would you approach it?
Well, much the same for fishing, stabbing through a spot with thick weed. I'd fish the bag, because the bag will sit there, open up and give you a small parcel. Fishing through stringer weed and silky weed, stuff like that, I prefer an inline system. Break off, i.e. because when the lead does break, the fish inevitably comes up to the top of the water and stays up in the water columns. I'd fish that with a stiff link, coated braid, with a pop-up presentation with the stick, so that as it drops through the water columns, sits in the weed, that inevitably sits over the top of the weed, punching it down as it goes in, like the bag, but like the helicopter system, a bit in between. And
would you glug that up or soak it in anything?
No, absolutely not. The reason for that being, you want the stick, the contents of the stick needs to be as light as possible. So as the lead travels down, the stick stays just that slightly more buoyant and doesn't want to travel down quicker with the lead.
Okay.
That way the link then gives it a chance to push it away and lie up in the weed. The lighter the bag mix, the better presentation when fishing in weed.
And would you spot over that as well?
Yeah, I would, absolutely. Same as the helicopter presentation and the stick mix, I'm trying to create a spot in the weed. Okay. So if I can get them rummaging around, finding bits and pieces, hopefully they're going to find the stick as well.
Yeah, and they're cleaning the spot off in the process.
There you go, that's it.
Okay, well there's quite a few tactics that people can put into their own fishing when approaching weedy waters.
Yes, and we hope that you use them when you come to Horcott. The fish in Horcott love the weed. It's like a natural larder. It's full of snails, insect larvae and bloodworm, which is another reason these fish get so big.
Few moments later.